midnight at the oasis. Set your camel to bed. Shadows painting our faces. Traces. Romance in our heads.
So this dude come along, he was a camel jockey, and he had to run away because he had a love affair with this girl who just happened to be, you know, the daughter of the king, and I don't know, things got kind of screwed up. So, like most truck drivers out there, camel jockeys, 2,000 years ago now, maybe 3,000 years ago, hell, I don't know, 1,000 years ago, sometime back there in Arabia before the violence erupted and been going on forever. Well, maybe it was still going on then. Hell, I can't remember. I'm just telling the story, you know. Because I remember that, baby. Yeah. So here he is, man, camel jockeying, you know, all over the world, you know. I mean, at least the world as they knew it back then, you know. It wasn't long, though, before he found his way to, you know, the Americas and Des Moines, Iowa, because he had a sudden reversal. He got injured while unloading a camel one time. He couldn't work no more. He couldn't jockey them camels. They wouldn't jockey with him anymore. They looked at him and says, oh, my God, what a freak. We ain't working with that boy. So, I mean, you know, something happened, and he hit this mystical gateway over there in Indiana somewhere, and wound up in Des Moines. I mean, India, not Indiana. Well, they're both about the same thing. I think he bounced through Indiana on his way to Des Moines, and he wound up being a cab driver there in his older days, man, you know. He had this white, fuzzy beard way down to his ankles, you know. He had to trim it off a little bit so he could drive taxi and not get it all caught in the clutch pedals and shit, you know. So he'd done that, man. It was, you know, about to the center of his chest now, kind of, you know, a comely-looking thing. It, you know, kind of went with his turf, you know. But he really had trouble getting fares. A lot of people, he'd pull up to pick him up, and they'd take one look at him and jump out of the car or not get in, as the case may be. You know, and son of a gun, it was really a hard life, man. He just barely was able to make ends meet, but ends were meeting, and it was okay, man. And every now and then, some sweet little chickie would get in that didn't like to play with his whiskers, man. And he got off on that shit, so it was okay, man. He could hang out there in Des Moines for a while. But, you know, down there along the river, there was these bright little glowing lights. The Des Moines River there in the middle of Iowa. Des Moines being named after that. What does Des Moines mean? I think the trees. No, that's Boise. Des Moines means we're French and we don't know how to say anything, man. Our river is winding. These plains, now I can understand that. Can't you? Well, that's where Des Moines is out on Des Plains here in Central America. For those of you in our worldwide audience that don't know the geography of the US of A, hewed out of Turtle Island in some oddball sort of way, man. So here he is, man. It's probably back there in the 60s or the 70s. And, you know, he's probably 85, man. But he's still got the will to drive, man. And driving he is. And jacking up them fares when he can, you betcha, man. Don't mess with the bearded man. He'll take it all away from you if you mess with him, man. Because he's a real generous guy, but ooh, if you mess with him, you know. He had this Indian chick got in one time and, you know, had to ride off to this fancy hotel. Now, I'm talking about, well, what would I say? Indian, you know, Indian, you know. Anyway, he had this Indian chick, and she took him for a ride on the way to a grand hotel. And he said, that don't feel right. That don't smell, you know. Oh, but I'll give this girl hell, man. She just can't. I mean, she's cute, but she's not that cute, you know. She's drunker than a skunk, too, so I know she don't mean it, you know. So what he did, he put her out there. Didn't take her money, just waited till he saw her when she was sober. You know, they all run out of money in a couple of weeks. You know, payday's on the 1st, and after that, about 14th, they're all back to sobriety. Very little money, too. It's a tradition in Des Moines. The Indians like to party there. Well, maybe I'm getting my cities mixed up, but it was some city. Oh, it was a western city. It wasn't Des Moines out there on these plains. Wow. I think it was, it wasn't Chicago. It wasn't L.A. No, that'd be way too rugged for this old boy. Camel jockeys can't do that. They can jockey camels, and they can drive taxis, you know. Because, I mean, whatever injuries he had over there in Indiana, you know, when he got to Ohio or Illinois or, you know, I think it was Wyoming, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Now, that's the place. I mean, wind blows all the time. It's colder than hell. Summers last about 35 minutes, and they're beautiful. The railroaders really appreciate them. So do the truckers, too, because that's what Cheyenne does, and that's what people there do. They service the trains and the trucks and drive them and so forth, man. You know, fix them up and all that shit. While the wind's blowing 40 below, I mean, they're used to it, don't you know? They're Wyomingites. They're made out of grit, man, you know, and nothing, I mean granite, you know, but really soft granite. They're sweethearted people. When you get underneath their leathery scales, just ask old Dick Cheney, you know. In fact, take a look under his scales. He comes from Wyoming, you know. He hides things from people back home. I've seen him doing it, poor guy. Yeah, how about that, man? You're so embarrassed, you can't even go back to your home state and tell them the truth anyway, man. Oh, jeez. You know, that's not so clever. That's kind of lame, man. You know, I mean, I had a hard time growing up over there in my homestead of Utah, which is out here in the West. But I still give them my best, because that was then, this is now. God, it's a totally different situation all the way around. I don't hold no old grudges. Shit. How could you, man? That was like 120 years ago, man. Well, that's the way the old boy was. Wow, there he was. He was driving taxi in Salt Lake City. No wonder all them Indians were there getting drunk on the 1st and broke on the 14th. Hell yeah, that's where he was, this old bearded white guy. Looked a lot like me. In fact, I think I passed him on the street a couple times. I was hauling a congressman one time through a flood. I was being a hero, man. Oh, accolades, accolades. And God, no matter what I did, I just couldn't get that much money out of that cheapo Congress person. They'll go back there and give their friends $50 billion, but you think they'll tip the taxi $15 for getting her through the flood? The flood of the century? Hell no. No, she was a sweetheart. I'm just kidding around. She treated me right, you know. I don't need no $15 tips, you know. Nah, that was good, man. That was plenty, man. I love being of service in that way myself. That's why I can so relate to this dude. See, now, I don't know if you recognize it, but you're hearing the real story of Santa Claus. So now we're talking, you got to understand, even though this was 3,000-4,000 years ago, a place like Salt Lake City or Des Moines on the Des Plains can be around, man. I mean, you know, because it's a, you know, we live in this flexible reality where time kind of just jumps in and out of itself. Just ask Billy Pilgrim, he'll tell you. He's having a great time, though, right now. He's hanging out on Trafalmador with Valerie Perrine. I think I'd stay there, too, for a while, man. Not forever, though. No, no, no. Even the most gorgeous and spectacular of them, man, after a while, you know, it's time to move on. Oh, I'm just kidding around with you, but wow, they must be having a good time up there in Trafalmador. Eh? Yes, indeed, man. So the old bearded dude who's, you know, ultimately going to become Santa Claus, well, you know, down along the Jordan River there in Salt Lake City, it wasn't Des Moines River, it was Jordan River, yeah. I mean, well, of course it's named after the River Jordan in Palestine and shit, you know, wow. Here's to Palestine, baby, long may she wave. Oh, I'm in trouble now. Clink, clink, clink all the way around, babies, we love you so. So here, oh, we got to have a toke, too. This is that kind of story. We got to have a toke, too. Yeah, baby. Merry Christmas and a ho, ho, ho. That's the way you get it here on the Coyote Medicine Show, don't you know? Only and exclusively on the Hazy Radio Network. Forgive me for the interruption in the cab driver's tale. The sorry old cab driver's tale. You got to understand, this guy was like 40, 50 years older than me, so I didn't look like him then. You know, and this was like 3,000 years ago, so the time frames were different anyway. So I don't even know how we presented one another to each other, but somehow that was there. You know, there was a mutual energy between us, but we were just basically passerbys on the street, man. You know, we'd salute with our old hat every now and then, howdy doody, and away we'd go, you know. And he's like I said, this dude had a tough time of it, man. You know, the fares weren't exactly easy. For some reason, all the chicks in town and some of the gay dudes were allergic to white-bearded men, you know, driving taxi. They wouldn't get in. They said, no, that guy looks like an animal, man. Oh, surely I can't go. Send me a young woman, please. I can trust them. Oh, so it goes in the hard life on the streets there in Salt Lake City of 3,000 years ago. That could have been right now. Hell, I don't know. All I know is down there along that magical Jordan River, this river that runs into the Great Salt Lake and then doesn't go anywhere else, just evaporates, man. Poor thing, you know, and it must be frustrated in its reality trying to get back to the ocean. But, you know, flying's just as good as flowing, I guess. So there we are, man. But it kind of makes the Great Salt Lake kind of like the Dead Sea. And the dead water, man, the only thing can live in there is little saltwater critters, you know. I mean, really salty critters. Not ocean critters. They all die in there. This shit is so saline. That's why they call it Salt Lake City and Salt Lake and shit like that, you know. Of course, it was founded by a bunch of dumb Mormons who took it away from some... Oh, anyway, we won't talk about that aspect of it. Here it was 3,000 years... Did I dodge around that pretty good? Here it was 3,000 years ago. There's this guy driving taxi in downtown Salt Lake City, hanging out at the Hotel Utah, I think, you know, right there next to the Mormon temple ground where the shiny old temple and tabernacle. And you can go on a tour over there and we'll give you some good propagandistic BS, but you sure as hell ain't going to get in our temple unless you got a recommend from your bishop. And you know what you got to do to get that, babe? No, I mean clean living and all that shit, right? We know what goes on in those secret temples. This old boy's been on the street long enough in Salt Lake City to hear a few stories now. Oh, my goodness. You know, and behind those rumors, there's some truth. Behind those stories he's heard from the back seat of that old taxi. Holy hell. There's something kind of unreal going on next door there to the Hotel Utah, but he's not involved in it. He's just driving taxi on his way through to some other paradigm. Maybe he's going to go to China next, or, you know, and see if there's some camels there to jockey around. You know, this driving thing's fun, but it ain't near as much fun. It's camel jockeying. I mean, the car don't have that much of a personality. You can't bribe it with food or nothing, man, you know. You just got to, you know, put good vibes out and make it go, 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 even though it's an old piece of shit fall apart, don't you know? Taxis are made like that, and they're beat to hell because everybody else drives them too. Well, he had his own by then, but it's still pretty beat up time he got it. I mean, you can't afford to go out and be buying Cadillacs and throwing them on the street when you ain't getting but $250 flag drop, etc. I mean, you know, it's just, you've got to be careful in this world. Keep your economics just right, and this dude knew that. He understood that. Ah, but God, there was this one time. This hooker got in. Oh, he knew she was trouble. He says, baby, I don't know if you really want to go with this old man. Because I'm kind of an ornery jerk, and, you know, I might just yell at you or something, you know. Probably you don't want to go with me, honey. You want to stay here on... And she says, bad, pappy, oh. And she got, of course, her fingers in his whiskers, and bribed him along. He couldn't help it, so he took her for a ride, though he knew trouble was coming, and sure as hell. You know, we met with the mark, and there was a lark, and then there was a hassle because somebody's wallet disappeared. And this guy was embarrassed beyond belief. You know, he's about ready to quit everything, you know, life included. You know, screw that, man. How do you get into situations like that? You know, with naked people in your back seat fighting over who stole the wallet. God, life's an entertaining place to be. Well, of course, along down the Jordan River now, there's all these little glowing lights. Now, some people might call them fairy lights, some people might call them angel lights, but they're there, man, you know, and if you're there on the right now, you might see them glowing around. They kind of look like fireflies, only a hell of a lot brighter. And they're bopping around down there, and this dude just happened to be parked somewhere down there along the banks of the Jordan River, because that's where this handsome couple that requested to be. Jeez, some of the things you do for a few ticks on a meter, eh? Wow. So there you are, man, and you know, wow. So these lights, though, they sensed the trouble. They heard the noise, and they felt the heart of an ancient one in that camel jockey dude, you know. So they rose up out of that river, you know, and they come floating over to the taxi cab and illuminating the naked souls in the back seat so the old man couldn't avoid the sight of them, you know. They knew he'd like that. I mean, they're fairies, you know. They're kind of mischievous, you know. Yeah, all of them are like Tinkerbell, and they're kind of pissy about it, too. Oh, I'm just kidding. They're cool, man. And they rocked and rolled, man. Before you knew it, these people were just, you know, out of the back seat and floating away. And the old guy had his wallet back, and the girl was like a pristine virgin that was going to go to Catholic church come Sunday, man. You know, I mean, everything turned out just right because these fairies made it right, you know. So, of course, that was Salt Lake City, so I think she was probably going to some Mormon service. No, there is a Catholic church just down the street from there. So she was probably going there. Yeah, the Pope would have it that way. So, we got to let him do it, So anywho, then this dude's alone down by the river, and he's surrounded by all these fairy or angel persons, whatever they are, these bright little lights. He can see in these little balls of light, he can see a person formed in the middle of it, but they're so bright, it kind of hurts your eyes, kind of hurts your heart too, because you're like, wow, why can't I be like that? And the angel looked at him and looked right in the eye and says, well, baby, you are, man, Listen, we got some digs up there at the North Pole. If you're tired of this cab driving, dig. And you know what? It worked out. Now we got Santa Claus, man, and he brings the kids toys at Christmas and shit. And this year, well, it's a he and she thing, I got to tell you, because him and the fairy or the angel, whatever you want to call her, well, they were kind of attracted to each other. They couldn't help it, That's why they needed the isolation in the North Pole, and a bunch of elves who are really newts. Well, they're not really newts, they only like elves, But that newts them as far as humanity goes, so they're really not all that fascinated by our shenanigans, Especially when we're partying down with angels. Elves don't want too much to do with angels, because they're too direct, and elves like to dance around the corner and, have a few beers and think about it and, maybe party down with the neighbor girl before they go anywhere, do anything about it, you know what I mean? I think they're kind of Irish, So, of course, the story goes on from there, but there it is, man. A camel jockey from 3, 4, 5, 6, 10,000 years ago, that had to run away from a sordid love affair with a king's daughter in this tiny little kingdom of Fruitlandia. I'm sure it was. Fruitlandia, it must have been. And that's a cosmic name if ever there was one. Oh, we're not going to say it. We're not going there. Oh, Grandpa's sitting here on this chair having a great time growing his hair. While you watch along and sing along. We even got a little campfire behind us today, man. We're doing okay here on the Coyote Medicine Show. Getting it on in that Coyote way. Been having a lot of fun with you this morning with a tunage that makes your heart large. I hope you enjoyed that little tale of Santa Claus. It's a little different than what you've heard before, but listen. For real, man. Now, let's Grandpa get serious for just a moment. Feel my heart. Oh. No, it's the big one, man. And just know that Grandpa's just fooling you, man. They're in it. None of us have a chance in hell, and we're all going to prison, because that's where all people deserve to be, because we're all guilty, don't you see? Oh, God, Santa Claus, you better... Where the heck is he when I need him, or she? Wow. You never... my legends about the hot chick, I think they started with that Mrs. Santa Claus, man. She's not really his missus. They're just shacked up in the North Pole. Who cares up there? Ain't got no government to regulate them. They didn't even have anybody to say words over them or nothing, They should have called Grandpa. I'd have done it for him. But anyhow... They're called Mr. and Mrs. because it makes the kids think it's okay, And it doesn't challenge the culture too greatly, But as usual, reality's far beyond what the culture has in it, right? Yeah, babies, You never knew Santa Claus was a camel jockey before, did you? Well, I didn't either till yesterday or day before. I forget when it was that one dude. Yeah, man, he told me his whole story, man. We were hanging out having a cup of coffee here at the Spaceship Lab, 9,000 feet high in the Rocky Mountain sky, and he just happened to, we got into that personal place like you do with some folks, even though, it may not always be appropriate. Santa Claus told me her tale, wow. Well, now I won't tell you her background, the angelics, because, it's not nice to pry on the angels. You want to keep them your friends, So it's best, even if you know something sordid about them in the background, if they lived a life that was kind of colorful at one time or another, for example. Well, it's best you don't talk about that shit, okay? You just make them feel like angels, and that's the way they stay. At the moment you find a stain on their clothes, you're in trouble, baby, because then they're going to kick your little butt. Sweet and softly in that coyote sort of way, but you're going to tumble around a little bit in this life. You see, I often think I must have messed with an angel myself before I was born here this lifetime, Because I sure tumbled around for a long time before I finally realized I was in the fun house and I was supposed to be tumbling around in that big old thing and learn how to walk while I was tumbling. And I got up and I learned how to do it. First on all fours, of course. Just like everybody else, man. Oh, I'm so glad when I got rid of diapers, weren't you? Man, it was a difficult fun house. I don't know who built that one, but I don't think I want to go back there. It was cool. It was a lot of fun when you finally figured it out. But oh my God. Whew. Well, thank goodness there was Santa Claus. There's 8 tiny reindeer who, of course, they're fairy beings, you know. And who do you think the elves are? A bunch of fairies. Well, what are fairies? Bunch of angels, you know, the pint size, you know. It doesn't matter in this multi-dimensional reality. You can put a lot in a little pint, let me tell you. The whole universe, in fact, and then some, man. Wow. I tell you, and then the ant house happening up there in the North Pole, because, you know, really 4,000 years ago, we needed to counterbalance the Nazi energy at the South Pole. So Santa Claus showed up, and he's been there ever since, Mr. and Ms., as we're calling him these days, you know. If you want to see something like it, there's this Superman movie made back in the 80s. It's tacky as hell and dumber than a piece of toast, but it's got this scene in these icy caves of Finland where Superman and Lois Lane are getting together, and Lois Lane shows her tits and stuff, you know. Wow, man, it's pretty dramatic, pretty phenomenal. And you really got to see that one, because, you know, that'll remind you of what Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus are up to when they're making toys. They're nice little girls and boys. That's why they love the children, too, because they're so full of love. And, you know, I mean, time they're done with winter up there, wow, summer in Bahamas seemed pretty damn restful, I'll tell you. And that's where they head, too, man. Now, I know you've seen them down there a time or two. No, they don't hang out at Treasure Island. Hell no. Or Atlantis either. No, 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 no. They're off on this private little island where people really can't bug them. Just a few barefoot cruisers come through every now and then and hang out at the local pub, and then they're on their way. But that's a good place to be. Us with Santa Claus. June, July is a good time for that, man. He loves the Bahamas, so does she. And you ought to see her in a bikini. Holy hell. Angels know how to grace a bikini really well, I'm telling you. Whew. But, of course, you know, they don't always wear those either because, you know, it's a private island. I mean, you can do what you want, man, you know. Be as you please, man. And so it's, you know, that's Santa Claus's way. Well, now you know the secret game, you know, because we're coming up on the holidays and shit, and we're in this time of truthful revelation and everything. So I just thought I'd lay that little story on you, the one was told to me just a few days ago by the very souls that are present in the story I just related, man. And now you're fully integrated. You know where Santa Claus come from. And here you always thought he was a product of the Coca-Cola company, didn't you? I did too for the longest of time. I mean, Santa Claus and Coca-Cola look like the same thing to me, you know. When I was drinking a Coca-Cola, I felt the love of the whole North Pole going down my gullet and making me satisfied and perking me up a wee bit, you know. Oh, my goodness. It's a holiday show here on a Free Day Friday as we're warming you up for a real holiday, which is happening today. Ho, 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 and Merry Christmas, don't you know? Here on the Hazy Radio Network with Grandpaw Coyote, the mystical storyteller himself. The tales of your heart flowing forward here day after day, man. I'm telling you, moment to moment, though. Some folks are just holding their breath, man, and I'm telling you, you just gotta breathe. Yeah. Relax, baby. Don't let it take you away. Let it come back and help you play. Be okay. You know, I don't care whatever your play is, man. You know, just be okay with whatever it's been. You know, and be on with it, man. You know, you don't have to be that way again, you know. I know we've got Dick Cheney out there in the Badlands of North Dakota now. And he's out there, you know, and it's like getting damn cold out there, and winter's blowing in, man, and there's snow and desolate conditions. But he's a brave man, and he's undertaken this, what you would call a visionary quest, a soul quest, to see if he can survive the harshness of an early winter in the Badlands of North Dakota, for one. And for the other, you know, he's looking for truth and trying to find, you know, God and all that stuff. Because he misses her, you know. You know, all the ladies he's been with, none of them are near as much fun as she is, you know. And, you know, having come from Wyoming, he's kind of a pioneer in soul, so he's out there looking for his heart, don't you know. I think Hillary's right behind him, and she's probably hanging out in some place that's a whole lot more wussy than that. Probably down there in Arizona, somewhere around Tucson, you know, trying to communicate with the UFOs as they fly by. Guess what? They won't pay her the time of day anymore. I mean, you know, Hillary, I'm sorry, but you're going to get a nice tan. That's about it down there in Arizona. You know, you'll be back, ooh, out of the action for you know what happened, baby. It's over with, man. You know, since Santa Claus and Ms. Claus, you know, got it on for so long now. Well, so the North Pole is thawing out. What do you think is thawing it out, man? You know, Mr. and Ms. Santa Claus, you know. Shoot, even when they're down in the Bahamas, they're still connected to it in that radiant heat. Oh, you know what that does to the polar ice now, don't you? The bears are getting kind of anxious, the polar bears, but, you know, the big white things, the big white monster bears that'll eat you if you ever show up there. They don't eat Eskimos because they like them, but, you know, if you showed up there, you're fair game for the polar bear, believe you me, man. Well, anyway, they're kind of PO'd because these guys have been messing up the environment up there, and the bears, you know, have to live on floating ice now instead of solid ice, shit like that. And how do you do that, man? You know, and survive, man. I mean, they can swim, but, you know, what if you drift out to sea a couple 100 miles? Where are you going to swim to then? You know, shit. You're just a bear. You're only worth so much, you know. You only got so much salt in your bones, man. So much energy in your heart, you know what I mean? So, you know, they're a little upset, but don't worry, baby. You know, Mr. and Ms. know exactly what they're doing there. I mean, it is, yeah, forever, man. It's transformation going on for 3,000-4,000 years. While everybody else off playing the game somewhere else, never even paid attention to anything north of the frozen tundra there, you see. They got away with it, man. Shit. They recreated the whole earth. It's a real Santa Claus, man. Not the kind that brings you goodies and takes your cookies for Christmas, you know. But the kind that, like, you know, shares an expansive reality with you that brings an age of truth because you all were in it together with him anyway. You all wanted what Santa Claus was going to bring you. All of you. I don't care if you're Muslims. You still, you know, you may not believe in Santa Claus. You don't have to. But you want Santa Claus to bring you something good for Christmas no matter what. I don't care who you are. You can be an atheist, you know. Call it Xmas. That's pretty good. I like that. But anyway, or don't even call it anything. You know, be like I was 100 years ago. I don't even celebrate that shit, man. Holidays are evil. Oh, God. The uptight 80s and Ronald Reagan. I think we sent him down to the South Pole to thaw out a little bit after he expired from this planetary reality. You got to give him this. He was a good actor, man. God. I thought he'd just B-grade bullshit when he was running against Pat Brown back there in the early 60s, mid-60s, yeah, for governor of California. You know, I mean, they just showed him in this movie with Bonzo the chimpanzee, and Bonzo was a hell of a lot smarter and cuter than he was. So it took him a while to get to be governor. I think he tried 2 or 3 times before he finally hit, you know. Somebody bribed somebody. Well, anyway, we won't talk about that. Because, see, Santa Claus, Mr. and Ms., they've been up there doing their thing forever and ever and just building the energy, building the energy, building the energy over all these thousands of years, ever since he drove cab there and in Salt Lake City and found himself afloat on the banks of the Jordan River, more or less. Oh, it's such a flexible and divine reality, you know. When you catch on to the Coyote humor, you start to see there's a little thread all the way through it. Just like one time we're listening to the Boston Pops, you know, and the orchestra sounds like chaos, man. You know, of course, it's the Boston Pops, so we're letting them get away with it. I mean, shit. You're not going to be critical of that. But everybody's kind of squirming in their seat and feeling it, you know. They're about ready to start throwing rotten tomatoes. We have a sack full of them, in a plastic bag full of them, in our little backpack there. We're ready just in case the show turns sour, you know. We expect a lot out of the Boston Pops Orchestra, don't we? Yeah. So anyhow, I mean, you know, and it all sounds, I mean, they start, you hear one little flute start, and suddenly there's a fiddle, but it's going, you know, and geez, everything in the orchestra is going crazy. All the instruments going their own damn way, playing their own damn melody in their own damn way, and it's utter chaos. And it's excruciatingly painful. You know, that's why you wiggle in the seat. You really, your hand is itching greatly to grab those tomatoes and start throwing them. enough is enough, I mean, you know. You came for a rockin' show, not for this stupid, chaotic thing. And then through the midst of that chaos, just about the time you got your hand on the gushy one, now you got to go wash up. You know, you started to hear a harmony, a thread of harmony, a trickle of sense, of beauty, poetry down the middle of that chaos. And little by little, that little trickle of harmony became the whole divine presence, playing the most beautiful symphony there could ever be, each piece perfectly, in tonage and tonage, etc., perfect flow with all the other instrumentations. It was one of the grandest symphonies, rock and roll, of course, that you ever felt or experienced in this reality. It's amazing shit, man. You know, Mr. and Ms. Santa Claus were totally impressed when they went there, let me tell you, man. Just blew their jets. Well, that's why we're here at the Simpson Times. We got to thank the Boston Pops Orchestra for that, for creating a little chaos, excruciatingly so, dang their little heights, but at the same time showing us the way, the harmonic flow of the mighty river of life. I think Santa Claus is a riverboat pilot on that mighty river, don't you? And I think the Miz is the bellwether at the front of it. I mean, in persona, not in person, of course, you know. She's really up there in the, you know, the cabin house with him, and they're having a good time wherever they go. I mean, these kids just can't stop. They're crazy, man, I'm telling you. Love, love, love. Ho, ho, ho. You never knew that about Santa Claus. You thought he's a fat old man that drank too much and hung out in the department stores around Christmas time and, you know, let kids sit on his lap and tell him, man, be bratty and stuff, you know. But no, it was, you know, this is a lot deeper, a lot further than that. I mean, just like everything else in this reality, when you see through the facade, you start to live the truth. Ain't that fun? We got you on the run here this morning. We got your mind, you know, unscrambled. Is this a wake-up call for you all and so much more here on the Coyote Medicine Show? Was it worth enduring that excruciating chaos of the beginning hour or so as Grandpa warmed up your heart and your soul and, you know, got you rocking, got you rolling, got the rhythm going in your heart and soul, you know? Well, yes, indeed. I think we're in it together, babies. I feel you. I love you too, man. Of course, we're all in it together. We're all this big love, you know. It's the affair. Well, we must all be Mr. and Ms. Santa Claus, eh? The angels and the demons coming together for real, and this time with great heart. The fulfillment of the divine dream. You know, there ain't no angels and demons no more. Mr. and Ms., they even discord. Way up in the North Pole, don't you know? Hey, and just what? Admiral Byrd knew this, but he daresn't tell. You know, he stumbled on them. I mean, they aren't always as watchful as they need to be. He stumbled on them at one time during one of his exhibitions there in the late 40s, you know. But when he stumbled on them, the light was so bright he couldn't even see them, so he didn't really know what was going on. He just felt it, and it knocked him to the ground. And then he had a vision, a dream about what Mr. and Ms. were doing and what they were up to up there. And he found the North Pole somewhere else, man. He let those guys go. He's a smart man, don't you know? Good enough, you know, to follow the flow. Well, babies, maybe now you know how to follow the flow. Maybe you know how to live the divine dream. If you don't, and you happen to live in Salt Lake City, why don't you go down and park by the Jordan River for a while? See if those little ferry boat angels will come up and talk to you. Maybe you'll wind up, Mr. and Ms., something else in the divine dream of love and have just as great a time. You never know. Personally, me, I'd rather rock and roll and dance down with the entire tribe than hide out in the North Pole. I just ain't my style, don't you know? Hiding out, well, for a little while, you know, we all need our alone time, our gravitation to the heart time, shit like that. Regravitation, which is re-energizing, which is letting go of gravity. Yeah, all the weight and heaviness in life. That's why we're playing it light this morning here. It's a free day Friday, baby. And it's a free day fumble from old Grandpa's heart. Don't grumble. Just remember, you created it. Because I'm your living, loving motion just like you're mine. We're all in this together, and whatever you want to hear or receive this morning, that's what comes rolling out of me. It's the divine comedy emotion, and God, we're starting to like our place here, ain't we, babies? Starting to figure this shit out in a real sort of way. And we don't have to figure nothing, just live it. Let it flow, babies. Ooh, we got the key to your heart and soul. Here on the Hazy Radio in the morning time with Grandpa Coyote and the Coyote Medicine Show. Where else but this beautiful hazy radio network. You know, heart of gold, babies. Anywhere you want to find it. So we've been a bit metaphorical here, yes indeed. And had a good time with it too, ain't we? It's all about that heart of gold, fulfilling your need. That's the holiday we're having today. Yeah. So now, babies, you know, as you continue this flow and you finally contain yourselves and can't boogie-woogie anymore, then get out there and play the game of this life like never before, man. Just shine bright. Let the rest of the mother truckers just get out of the way. So says Grandpa's. I'm helping you get out there and play, yes, each and every day, Monday through Free Day Friday, here on the Hazy Radio Network. Happiest network you ever found. And now, oh, Carlos, there he is. Now he's not. We gave him a couple of more toasts of some really green, crystally good shit. Watch this.
Hey now, all you sinners, put your lights on. Put your lights on.